niche core argument. On one hand, I've been advised by friends that you should always think about the core of the discipline and look at that because you'll have more publishers interested in manuscripts that have to do with core issues. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, there's this discussion of, if you develop a niche expertise in an area, you add more to the discipline in that sense. The unfortunate thing with that, of course, is that there may be fewer publishers interested in sort of this niche expertise. Could anyone, if you're maybe just reflect on that? And the other question I have is just about, when you talked about a project needing more money, could you give us an idea of how much more money?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
it depends.
It depends.
It really depends.
I guess what, well, so there are certain things that require more money. So for instance, in some cases, a book is a very, very long book. And that book is very, very long, and it's long because that's what the book needs. It needs those 600 pages to do this. And peer reviewers will say, they won't say, okay, all this stuff has to go out, and publishers are sensitive to this. There are short books and there are long books, and just as the sort of generic question, how long will it take my book to get published, how long a book should I write, is not really a good question because you know how long it needs to be to answer the question that you're trying to answer. But while that's true, it does take more resources to publish a longer book. So sometimes a book is long. It's a great. It would be a compromised work of scholarship were it to be shortened in half, but we need to find the money to make it possible for us to publish that long book.
And that's thousands, not hundreds.
That's thousands,
yes,
not hundreds.
Yeah.
Double-digit thousands?
Yeah, the average
yeah.
deficit for a scholarly book, a deficit, that like the stuff that you don't make, is between $15,000 and $20,000.
Those extra pages count.
Those extra pages count. Yeah. But the other thing is too, we're also trying to evaluate the best thing to do with the book. So, for instance, people are often concerned about the format that their book is available in, and the format, of course, has certain repercussions as far as the price, and price has certain repercussions as far as accessibility and stuff like that. And there are decisions that are made to publish books in certain formats at certain prices based on how necessary we think that is to doing the book the right way. But you should also know that while on the book buying end of things, a $27.95 paperback is a great thing and very accessible. It also gives us much less revenue, so we have to sell many more copies to make the same amount of money that we would have made if we were pricing it at a higher price. So there's a sort of a trade-off there, and often something like that, like additional funding, will allow us to publish a book in another format, or to lower the price of the book, or to do stuff like, for instance, art historians meet separately, but there may be certain kinds of visual requirements, pictures that you want, and the more pictures, the more resources need to be allocated in terms of printing and typesetters and design and stuff like that. So there are certain production requirements that may need additional money.
Images in particular can end up running into a very expensive area, particularly if you're requiring color. Color is extremely expensive to produce. For example, we have a book coming out on depicting Canada's children, which includes a large number of color plates. So there's been a lot of work done in order to make sure we have the funding to do what's necessary for that book. As Jonathan's saying, we want to produce the best book possible out of the manuscript. So it's important to find those extra areas of money. But in a case like that, you could be looking at thousands of dollars above and beyond, just for the difference between color and black and white imagery.
Also important to recognize, though, that, for instance, the resources that are necessary to produce your graphs in color as opposed to in grayscale are maybe not always necessary, and we can convey that information perfectly adequately. So, anyways, there is a substantial deficit, as Kel says. It tends to be in the sort of around $15,000 a book. The ASPP grant provides $8,000. Certainly, there's other external and internal sources of funding that we can draw upon, and We try to go after the amount of money that makes it possible to publish your book in the best way. That doesn't mean that if we don't get that money, we won't publish your book, but, you know, sometimes we need to try and do it the best way.
Regarding the core and niche, what I would say is publishers like big, broad core books because they could potentially sell more. Niche ones sell less, but ultimately, let's face it, we're in the business of slice publishing. We publish little slices of things, and that's another way of saying niche. And so you need to decide what book do you want to write. If you don't want to write a core book, then write your niche book and find a publisher who can access that niche and accept your $47 every 5 years in royalties.
Well, and that's really, I think, where a lot of the advancements in scholarship come from, though exactly those kinds of niche work. So it's a difficult, can be a difficult balance to strike, and it really depends on your own priorities, I think.
And if there's no sort of disparage, publishers don't look at some books and sort of intrinsically say this one is so much better. They're just different. And
necessary, both necessary.
Any book on American politics will sell 10 times more copies than a comparable book on Canadian politics. That's just the nature of the market.